Good. Thanks so much for joining me, Mal. I just want to introduce everybody, whoever's on now and everybody watching afterwards. This is Mallory Bauer from Berlin Patten Ebling. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit more about your world?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Mallory Bauer. I'm a transactional real estate attorney. I work at Berlin Patten Ebling. I've been there for almost 5 years. So day in, day out, I am working on real estate closings. Anything from brand new contract to new construction negotiations, condo development work, escrow disputes, all of that. I love what I do. Some days are better than others, but at the end of the day, it's really great and always really rewarding to get clients to the closing table, and get agents to build their portfolios and all of that jazz. So.
Now, you guys cover more than Sarasota. I know for personally, so you can tell everybody where you guys cover because it's a pretty broad area that you guys cover. If anyone knows Florida, I know there's a lot of agents coming from here. So why don't you let us know where you guys cover for anyone watching here that's looking for some professional help?
Yep. So we started in Sarasota, and then we've kind of continued to grow. We have a Lakewood Ranch office, Venice, St. Pete, Tampa. We just opened a Medina Springs office, so we're servicing Medina Springs and Naples. And then we're looking to kind of venture into downtown Bradenton, Anna Maria area in the next year or so.
And that's been great because we just closed the deal down in Naples. Mallory was able to handle the whole thing from Sarasota. Luckily, most of my buyers down there are out of state, so we were able to utilize Mallory right from Sarasota, help everything, and go pretty nonstop there. So do you handle a lot of files? Are you seeing a lot of out of state, us being in Florida?
Yeah, I would say probably 50%, if not more, of my buyers are from out of state. I get a lot of Canadian. My dog also is just going to continually make himself in the live.
So everyone at home, we know the dog's name is?
That's Cooper.
Okay, Cooper.
He loved COVID time because everything is on Zoom and he wants to be in
I love it. Cooper can hang out the entire call. I love it so much. So we got a handful of questions. I know we are on about 40 minutes because you're a lawyer and you're charging me by the minute. So I know that my bill at the end of this is going to be I'm kidding. Mallory's doing this for free. She's the best. But we got some questions from when I kind of first promoted this and wanted to get some information from everybody. And we got a handful of questions. I'm going to kind of go from some of the smaller stuff to a little bit more detailed, but let's just jump right into it. Can you explain for some of the people, because we have a lot of people that are at different scales of home buying, whether they've never bought before, all the way down to bought 27 homes as an investor. So let us know, what is a title and what does that affect here in Florida?
So a lot of people think, oh, I have title to the property, and they're really meaning they have a deed to the property. So title is used interchangeably as having a deed to the property where that's your ownership right. However, title insurance is having a title insurance policy. So a lender has that policy, and an owner, when you're purchasing, has that policy as well. So I think a lot of times people are saying, oh, I have title to this property, and I have to kind of ask a second question. Do you mean a title insurance policy, or do you mean title as your deed is showing your ownership to the property?
Gotcha. Now, you said deed too, and I guess that's another question came up. What is the difference between a deed and a title?
So a deed is the document that's actually the conveyance document transferring from seller to buyer. So that's what gets recorded in the public record showing that ownership interest has changed. Something we call a vesting deed is what we look at to see who the prior seller was, verify legal description, all of that. So a deed is the actual 2 to 3 page document showing who the parties are, the grantor, the grantee, legal description, and that's what's recorded, showing who the new owner is and who the previous owner was.
So now we had a fun one recently. I think it was actually the beginning of this year, is where I took a phone call from a prospective seller. And long story short, we almost sold the property, got it under contract until Mallory called me and said, Dan, the deal is fake. So how did you find that out? Because I know that right now fraud in ownership is running rampant across the United States, really, a lot here in Southwest Florida. Now, is that something you do within the deed and title search that you kind of came up with that we found out that this person was trying to claim ownership of someone else's property and use me to sell it? So go Dan.
Yeah. So actually, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of vacant land. It was vacant land scams. Typically, they're with foreign sellers who aren't residing currently in Florida, and obviously you can't live on vacant land unless you're in a tent. So they will kind of scam and see who these people are, and then they provide fake passports or fake identification, and they just scam the email. In Dan's situation, and we probably get one of these a week now, so kind of little FBI over here kind of tracking things. I mean, they're not good frauds. I mean, the passports look like they're taking stock photos from Google. I mean, if the name was Victor Chan, it would look like a Victor Chan, just very Chinese. I mean, they're all the same picture, so we can see them that it's the same person routinely. So whenever we get a vacant land contract now, we're doing hard mailing. We're reaching out to the sellers. We are requiring that the seller come to our office to sign closing documents. We will not do a mail away transaction, just because we don't want to be obviously insuring anything with fraud. And we don't want our buyers or sellers to be schemed out of something either.
Now, going back to the kind of the first thing you had just brought up with title insurance, how does that connect with a situation like that, or does it? And how does that affect? Because we just got a comment from Brooks out in Oakland, California, and he asked, are buyers fighting us for title insurance as much as they are him? So I guess that's kind of a little bit of a jumbled question, but how does title insurance kind of come into that? And are people kind of fighting that? And what's the importance of it?
So title insurance in each state has different requirements. So some states you have to purchase title insurance. Florida is not one of those states. However, you will be hard pressed to find any law firm that closes without them. My firm will not close without a title insurance policy. So, and I know most law firms, at least in the Sarasota, Manatee area. I do know there are some in Miami, which we call the Wild Wild West, that kind of laws over there. But in regard to title insurance, I know my firm doesn't close it. There's no law firms in Sarasota, Manatee area or Tampa that really do that. It's just you're falling on the sword. And if there is an issue, that's what the title insurance protects. So say in this instance with the vacant land, if we did miss it, or if another title company missed it, that title insurance protects that buyer, and it gives them a title claim as kind of the process that you go through, and whatever that purpose was, they're insuring you for that claim.
That's awesome. Okay, that's perfect. And that actually answers a couple of questions we have on there. So I'm glad that we kind of pounded that one out there. Good. What is, now going back to it a little bit before we get, that got into a little nitty gritty. So let's get back to a little bit more simpler stuff. How much is a standard closing? And I get this question all the time. And I think that it's super hard because I know the answer and I'm going to say it before you do. Everything's different. So I'm sure you get the same question. So I want to hear from you. Tell us, how much is the standard closing and how long does it normally take?
So a standard closing depends. For title insurance, it's based off the purchase price. So in Florida, we don't negotiate title insurance rates. Whatever the purchase price is, that promulgated rate tells us what we collect. Every law firm has a different closing fee. My firm's is $550. We don't charge any additional fees for cash transactions, loan transactions. We never kind of throw BS wire fees on. So we have a competitive rate. It really just depends though. If you're a loan, the bulk of your charges for closing costs are coming from your lender. But the cash transaction, the only thing we're charging is to record that deed, which is $18, $4.75 e-recording fee. Getting our title search, which is $60, and a lien search, which is $120. So paying cash, it's, I mean, probably less than $500 total for closing costs without that the title insurance.
Well, and we see that it's a huge difference between people that say, hey, I can pay cash, but I'd like to finance. And with the rates being where they are, it's not like a big savings because the closing on a loan is just so astronomical, and that's where they're getting their taxes. And that's where the hidden thing is. But cash, it really isn't that bad of a fee. And I will say I've had, out of all the closings we've done with you, we've only had one person that's shopped. And that person ended up paying, I think it was more. And they went with a discount person who worked out of the county, who had all these other fees. We had a closing somewhere else. And Mallows, we have zero relationship in terms of business. You know, I'm not saying this as an advertisement, but, you know, going with someone that knows how to do something versus the marketed services that are out there is kind of a solid advice to anyone out there that's thinking about shopping for title title, policy, insurance, closing, all that. So,
Yeah, and piggyback off of that too. Something that I see all the time, a lot of people open a title company and they're like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be super profitable. So many title companies go out of business in 2 to 3 years. So when we're dealing with title claims or corrective deeds, we reach out to this title company. Oh, they're not out of business. So it's important to be working with a company. We've been around for 20 years. That's reputable, and they're going to be there. Have a title claim, you can actually reach out to them. That's a big thing too. And then I didn't answer your question about how long a closing takes.
No, yeah, that's perfect.
So cash, the quickest I've ever closed a cash deal was 4 business days. That is not standard.
Hold on. How did you close it in 4 business days? I want to know that one.
So that we were lucky. It was buyer and seller were local. They paid the rush estoppel fee, so we got it back in 1 day. The association was super chill.
Hold on, it was an association too?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, this is a trick because I don't think I can get an association deed. Look at me for 4 days.
It was a condo on Siesta. They were self-managed, so you didn't have to go through a management company. They were just very, very easygoing, nice people. But typically a cash transaction, 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, financed 30 to 35 days. If you're working with a good loan officer or local lender, I know a lot of them do like pre-underwriting now. You can get 25.
And that's anything we're seeing too. 4 days is insane. So if anyone's seeing this and saying, Dan, let's do 4 days, I'm going to say, go find someone else, go see Mallory, because I'm not going to do it. But I will say we are around 15, 16 days on a cash. I'll usually write, we can, get 30 days, which usually with a lender sometimes ends up being 27, 28 days. But for the most part, that's wild. But I'm glad to know that you guys can get it done that fast. That's really kind of crazy. So,
watching, they're gonna be like, "Gosh, dang it, Mal."
No. I mean, I kind of, I will say, most of the time it's not title or it's other things. It's usually that lender in place. So if it is a cash deal, the only other people is going to be in the way is the bank. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that you guys, for my piece, I've seen it. It's always pretty on point. So that's awesome. Kind of next piece is, once we're purchasing, going into it, Homestead. We have this pretty cool thing in Florida. It has kind of a wonky gambling kind of backdrop of why I was here, but Homestead, not the city in Florida, but homesteading tax-wise. Tell us a little bit about that. I know this is a very vague and big question, which we'll probably have to do a sit-down talk another time, but tell us a little bit about Homestead and how it's valuable here.
Yep. So the state of Florida has a homestead exemption protection for primary residence property owners here. So if you're a single person, you get $25,000 off your assessed tax value. If you're married, you get $50,000 off your assessed tax value. Excuse me. And then it caps you at a 3% increase. So taxes this past year, we all just got our trim notices out, which is showing us, the new proposed assessed value. Taxes went up a lot this year. If you had a homestead, you are capped at that 3% increase. Additionally, it's a creditor protection. So if for some reason you have a bankruptcy case or, you're in litigation, your primary residence was protected. Nobody can take that away from you, which is always a nice benefit to have. So those are the biggest things. It's very easy to file for homestead. You can go to the tax collector's office. You can actually file online in Sarasota and Manatee County. The deadline for that is March 1st. Taxes are paid in arrears. So if you file on March 1st, 2023, you get that for your 2023 year because they're paid in arrears. But it's a wonderful exemption, huge protection for any clients. Anytime I'm representing a buyer, I go over that in detail with them at closing.
And that's the best thing is I think that, when you close with Berlin Patten, we're going to, that's one of the biggest things at the end is like, hey, do you know about homestead exemption? This is when you got to do it. So that's the greatest piece is the other question we got, and I actually didn't know how to answer this one. And there's been a lot of communities that have been around for a while here in Sarasota that have sold maybe for, $200,000 and then now is turning around to sell. And that was back in 1982. So rightfully so, that's fine. Here now they're going for 800,000 and those taxes have been the same. How much of a jump should we see? And I know that everything is dependent on the situation, but coming out of a homestead exemption, holding a place that's been like that forever? Are we going to see a massive jump? And what should people see? Because I know that for a lot of the places we see in Sarasota that open up in some neighborhoods that people have been wanting to see or get into, they've been around for a while. So how's that jump work?
So it can be a massive jump. For example, I had, the seller, the husband and wife have lived there for 45 years together, and they've had homestead protection for 45 years. Then if they go to sell, I mean, there could be as little as, sorry, my dog is coming in hot. They could be as little as $200 a year, something ridiculous like that. When the assessment comes out for the property appraiser for next year, because they're going to be known, because a sale has been triggered when they see that deed, I mean, it could be astronomical. So we're informing buyers of that, that unfortunately, unless it's new construction, we can't prorate based off of what we think the fair market value is of the property. It's based off the prior tax year. So we warn that. A good kind of tip as an agent, if you can pull the prior vesting deed and the sellers have lived an exorbitant amount of time, you can maybe discuss that with the listing agent and say, hey, I know my buyers are going to get really hit hard with taxes. Can we work some sort of credit out so that your buyer's strapped with a $10,000 bill next year?
I bring it up because I had one where I had an investor looking at a condo in Palmer Ranch with great distance to Siesta Key, has the golf course there. It made all the sense in the world, but for some crazy reason, the taxes were $1,800, and everything around it had been sold 2 years prior, and the taxes were $7,900, $8,200. So it's like, where's this one going to jump? And where, for the investor, that's hard to do any of the calculations. So thank you for going to that. And it kind of sucks, but I think that that's part of the business of real estate, is that sometimes it is a gamble. And I say gamble because you really never know if that could come back from $2,000 to $5,000 or $2,000 to $11,000. And that's kind of dependent on the government, really. Yeah.
And I mean, Florida also has, and I think other states have this too, but for disabled vets, they have total exemption of taxes. So we see I mean, they have to prove a bunch of documentation, but I see that pretty regularly, at least once a month, where there's been a disabled vet. They don't pay taxes at all. So they're 100% exempt.
That's great. So if anyone out here knows a disabled vet, hook them up, tell them to look up all this information, because if you're paying property taxes.
Yeah, they can be exempt.
That's awesome. Now, jumping ships just a little bit, and maybe not really because it's kind of all keeping on the property. Subdividing. Everyone gets super excited because we have land here. A lot of our people are coming from, at least my clients are coming from New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and they're going, oh my goodness, we've been bottled up, we get land. And then they go, I don't need all this land, Dan. What am I going to do with this an acre? And they don't understand that we can't just subdivide. So tell us in a short little time, tell us a little about subdividing land and the mess or unmess that can be.
So typically it is a mess. So subdividing a lot is not as easy as taking a legal description and saying, okay, we're going to split this in half and now we're subdivided. The first thing that any person has to do is talk to the county in their zoning department. We also have a land use department at our firm too. So depending on where the parcel is located, I'll kind of reach out to the land use attorney, ask for their sort of determination of, hey, can we split this? What kind of zoning are we in here? Because it depends on what zoning area you're in too. Yeah. If it is easy, and we do have some easy ones where, it's out east in Mayaca, or we're in a non-HOA area and you can be subdividing anything there, what we do is just get a new legal description from a surveyor. So that surveyor will go out to the property, divide the two legal descriptions. And then in Sarasota and Manatee County, it's as easy as splitting it with a deed. So all that we have to actually put that new legal description, and it separates the two parcels. The county, once the deeds are recorded, they assign new PIDs, which are parcel identification numbers, and they go through that way. So Sarasota and Manatee, it's not that hard once the actual zoning determination has been figured out. It's the figuring out the zoning determination that's the difficult part.
And I mean, I think that that's the biggest caveat, is that it can be done, but I do think that is probably only so much acreage left on Fruitville, on, you know, on certain streets. And when I say Fruitville, if anyone knows the Sarasota area, and if you're looking, or if you're watching it from afar, it's one of the main roads that goes from the downtown all the way out to the middle of the country. When I say country, I mean the middle of the state, like country, like farms. So I think that, you know, where we're going to see most people that want to subdivide are coming from bigger cities. So they're going to see a half an acre and want to split that into two. And that's just not really the case too much anymore, because we're seeing some of that. So now going into our California friends, I had a story I shared a handful of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, actually. And it was the legal definition of a bedroom. And now I had seen a 3-bedroom condo, and it happens a lot in real estate. And I think that it's, you know, kind of a funny thing, whether it's a den, an office, or a bedroom. And I got such a totally off the charts. I had people that I respect in real estate telling me it wasn't a bedroom, and then people I respect and saying, yes, it is. And I was all over the place until I looked it up myself. So yeah. I would like for you to answer, what is a legal bedroom?
A closet. I think you minimum with building codes, you have to have 70 square feet minimum, but you need a closet. In Florida, third a bedroom, you need some sort of closet.
So I got deep into all that code stuff. The code stuff's super interesting, but there are a lot of code out there, and it's kind of crazy. But to answer the question, for most of it, it's in terms of real estate law, it is very state specific. There's no federal laws that kind of guide us. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you know, there's no laws that guide us from federal level. Everything's state, right?
Correct. Which a lot of times is difficult when we get clients from different states and they're stating, well, in my state, we do it this way. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for me, states are different. So, I mean, things are just kind of crazy. I've heard in New York that the attorneys pick the closing dates. Everything is negotiable. It's not like that in Florida. So a lot of my Jersey and New York buyers are like, man, Florida's crazy. Like, right back at you. I've heard the same thing. So,
well, I think I heard like North Carolina says like some crazy, you have to have some deposit you can't get back, and you can cancel this contract the day before.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. So
every party has to have an attorney. Florida is not like that. So yeah. Which
so
kind of
that's actually a perfect transition into out-of-state buyers. I have a ton of them, but recently I've seen a bigger uptick in Canadian buyers. Obviously, we saw a big pause in that buying because of the pandemic, the closing of the borders, travel restrictions and such. But now that we're starting to see it kind of uptick, some things happening up there, you know, in their realm of the world, and some people wanting to move down here. What are the biggest struggles we see for Canadians buying? And with that, how does it work? I mean, we just did a deal together that was a Canadian buyer, so, you know, we can kind of go over anything that it worked really well. But kind of tell us, what is the process buying from Canada?
So if they're paying cash, it's really no different than any other kind of transaction. Most Canadians have some sort of RBC bank, a Royal Bank of Canada, and we have those banks in the US. So paying cash is pretty smooth. We have the opportunity to allow cash buyers to e-sign, so nothing needs to be notarized, so they can sign from the convenience of their home. They don't have to worry about any FedEx fees, anything like that. If they're purchasing with a loan, that is a bit tricky. A lender, your trusted lender, can kind of give you a little bit more information on their guidelines that they have to meet. But I mean, I've closed a lot of successful loans with Canadians. It's when they're selling, obviously, that's when we deal with the Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. That's when it's more of a difficult process selling than buying.
Yeah, we actually got a question earlier up, and I'm trying to scroll up here to see it. How do you assure a seller from FERPA regulations and that 30% hold, and for how long? And I mean, you helped me with an issue before you guys opened down in Naples that I had a wild transaction with a FERPA, and somehow I've been blessed with a bunch of FERPA. So dip into that a little bit. So if a Canadian owner owns here in America, wants to sell, they're going back to Canada, packing it all up. Tell us what's holding them back.
So for anybody who's not a U.S. citizen or a green card holder or here on a permanent visa, they are going to deal with FERPA taxes, which is the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 30%, it's a 15% hold. So what that is, and there's thresholds too. So if a property is 100,000 or less that the seller is selling, if that future buyer is going to be using that property for 50% of the time that they're actually at the property, the buyers can sign a no withholding affidavit and there is no FERPA taxes. If the property is between 300 and a million, it can go from 15 to 10% with that affidavit. Anything over a million, you're having FERPA no matter what, and it's going to be 15%. It's also not to say that that money is lost. The sellers can work post-closing with the IRS to maybe prove that they do pay taxes. And most of the time that money is reduced. It's called a reduced withholding certificate. And the IRS will refund them that money back, or at least some portion of it. They just started that act because they don't want foreign nationals coming in here, profiting off America, and then not paying taxes.
Yeah, no, completely.
But
well, and I think that the hard part is the law is very broad. I mean, it leaves a very wide open interpretation in the beginning of it, saying, hey, now, yeah, that's I don't want to get into FERPA more than that, because that is a perfect ending to where we need to leave FERPA. Because I will say, if anyone's struggling with FERPA, reach out to Mal and book some time. I don't know how the hell you book some time without getting a deal. Maybe get a deal in place and then ask her too. There we go. But you know, if you need help with FERPA stuff, talk to her, reach out to her email or something like that, because I'll tell you, I've worked with a handful of people with FERPA and she's the only one that's been able to give me a clear answer. And I think that comes from a research standpoint. I mean, I know that you're constantly trying to learn, get better and stuff like that. So it's super helpful for me because I don't know what the hell that stuff is. So I appreciate your help on that stuff. So I got this really interesting question, and it's someone that I don't know, and they started following me and asked the question like immediately. So, and I'm determined to find her the answer. So she is married. She says, I am married and I want to buy a home under my name only. Any legal advice? That's it.
okay, so
tell us.
if you're married, and this kind of falls back to Homestead. So if you're married and you're paying cash for a transaction, you can buy that property in your sole name. No questions asked. When we're titling it, we put Mallory Bauer. You don't have to put marital status. That's it. I'm paying cash.
That's it.
If you are buying an investment property with a loan, you do not need to have your spouse join. The only time you need to have your spouse join when purchasing a property with a loan is if it's going to be your primary residence. And that's because we have that protection. We are protecting spousal rights here. We don't want a husband to be selling a marital home out from under the wife or vice versa. So if it is investment property, if they're paying cash, investment or not, it doesn't matter. You don't need spousal joinder. I have one client, I think she's on her 8th or 9th. They're all investment properties. She's married. They run everything through her. So it just depends. The only time you need spousal joinder is if it's a primary residence. And I will say too, to this caveat, Florida does not recognize legal separation. So we get this quite a bit too. Oh, no, I'm single. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm married. I'm like, well, are you married or single? Well, we're separated.
We got that. We had a deal like that, and it came to the end of it. And I think that, didn't we have to get a signature from this past relationship that was
to join in on the mortgage? I mean, if the husband or wife is really going through with it and it's a primary residence, that spouse has to join in on the mortgage. So
now that's because of the homestead, the protection, really. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but at the end of this is realistically looking to protect family. I mean, in that case, if they were married.
And it's a constitutional protection. So there's no waiver on constitutional rights in the state of Florida with that. That's something, even if a divorce has been filed, the divorce decree has to be finalized. No way around it. There's no sort of waiver to that.
So if you are in the middle, and this is a total off question, and if it's hard to answer, let me know. I'm sure it's not. If you're in the middle of a divorce and moving here, is it safe to just wait to buy then? Is it pretty much a situation where you're just gonna have to rent until the divorce is finalized to get a loan to? I mean, obviously we're
if it's gonna be your primary residence. I mean, if you and your soon-to-be ex are cool and civil, I have that quite a bit too. The borrower is only going to be on the note, so the soon-to-be ex joins in on the mortgage, but they're not responsible to pay the mortgage back. They're just going in on spousal joinder. So it just depends. I mean, I had one last month where the guy had no idea. His lender was from, I think, California. They have no idea about Florida rights down here. And then he was saying he was single the whole time. 2 days before closing, he's like, I mean, I'm almost single. I'm like, hey, that's not the same thing. But so he actually luckily had cash. He paid cash, and then he's going to refinance once he's officially divorced, which actually I got an email today. He's like, fingers crossed, 3 days. It's like, okay.
The only time that everyone's like, yeah, you're getting divorced.
I know.
I mean, not the only time, but yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, that's too funny. Jason, another California realtor who's in San Diego, came at the right time because I'm just about to ask another California question. Are accessory buildings like California going to come to Florida where I can rent out my garage? That it was a great question we got from another client of mine that's moving from California. They're looking for investment properties on top of their own home. And they were wondering about accessory buildings like California, how they've changed the law. And if, anyone listening here, California updated a law. I'm sure you could probably tell way better than I could, but you could turn a garage or an accessory place into an existing home or, apartment to rent out. Long story short, it's just an extra place that you could kind of make money or rent out. Is that going to happen here in Florida?
So it has happened here in Florida. Sarasota, the city of Sarasota, the city of Bradenton, Sarasota County, and Manatee County allow them. They allow ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. The statute, if anybody wants a reference, is Florida Statute 163-31771. All it has to be is it needs to have a kitchen, it needs a bathroom, and a sleeping area. So this can be above a garage, it can be just on the presiding lot where the homeowner is living. I think there's 11 counties that allow this already in Florida. Sarasota County actually did it, I think, in 2019. Manatee County, I believe, just a couple months ago. We're on the forefront of that. They are allowed. I actually have a couple agents that have purchased investment properties in the Gulf Gate area here, and they've been profitable with the accessory dwelling units.
That's crazy. I mean, I know that for us, we see a massive amount of Airbnb, vacation rentals, investors that come in. And some of the properties that we have here have these extra buildings that were kind of made for garages or sheds or whatever that, that could be kind of turned into things. So it's a super interesting thing as we, anyone knows the area where we are 75 to the beach. There's only so much area that people want to be in. So I do think that to fit a little bit more bang for your buck for investors, it could be a cool thing. I have a couple more questions and we have like about 10 more minutes. So if anyone that's watching, we have a good amount of people watching right now. If you have any questions, you can pop down some. Jason just asked, can we charge our electric cars in Florida? Yes. I don't know, actually. That's a wild thing going on now in the world. Let's get back to some of our other questions that we had. Are there major different procedures on purchasing a Florida property than other states? I know we kind of touched on other people coming from different states saying, hey, this is so crazy to move here. What are some of the things that have popped out over time for you for people coming from out of state, especially for my viewers, because I know 80% of my buyers or clients come from out of state. So let us in on a little bit of advice.
Yeah. So I'm obviously only licensed practice law in Florida, so I know Florida law very well on what we do here. I'm not sure on what other states do. Obviously, I hear kind of things from New Jersey buyers, California buyers. Something that I know is different is that some states require an attorney on a transaction. Florida does not require an attorney. Obviously, shameless plug, it's stupid to not use an attorney. State of Florida. I know my firm is competitive and our closing fee is cheaper than a lot of title companies, and a lot of other law firms in Sarasota, Manatee, Hillsborough County are like that too. You're basically getting free attorney representation because you're guiding, whether it's your buyer or seller that's a client. We don't tack on attorney's fees too. So I think that's usually the biggest shock too, is I get out of state clients they're like, okay, like, do you bill me separately? I was like, I don't bill you. I'm a
Hmm.
transactional attorney. I always say I'm a happy attorney. I'm here to get the deal closed and make everybody happy. I'm not here with billable hour requirements. So I think a lot of buyers and sellers are usually happy about that. That in Florida, that's not the type of attorneys we are when you're doing a transaction.
I think the biggest misconception, and that was another question I was going to ask is, and you can give me a different misconception, but is that the attorney cost much more. We just had the deal in Naples that closed, and the buyer had called me early on and said, "Hey, who's our attorney? We need to hire an attorney." I said, "No, it's all wrapped in, man. It's in the title." And then that was such a cool thing because for him, he's like, "No way, like that's already." And they're so used to having a separate attorney, everything involved. So like you said, it's not a shameless plug because to me, it's a no-brainer. I think we should go back a little bit and discuss when we get a file. I usually send everything over to Mal and I say, "Hey, Mal, this is, so-and-so, reach out to them. This is the new file." Now you have a handful of how many people working on the file with you?
So I always have personally two people with me. We have a
Mm-hmm.
processor and then I have a paralegal slash closer. We call them closers, but they're
Mm-hmm.
paralegals. Um, Paralegal is really, we kind of say the quarterback. He's moving all the parties. I'm the coach. The Bills play tonight, so I'm getting in my football mentality. So overlooking everything. I'm making sure everything is done properly. The closers are kind of the quarterback. They're doing a lot of communication with lenders, parties. Not to say that I'm not. The processor is usually doing data intake, but you're getting three sets of eyes on every single file. So you're getting the processor, you're getting the paralegal, you're getting the attorney, and all of these people are working on your file for you specific to your transaction. I have a little team for him, so he works with the same two paralegals and the
Mm-hmm.
processors all the time, so that we're keeping him happy. And if something goes wrong, he can reach out to me, day or night and get it fixed.
Well, and that's the greatest thing is I think that that's why, going over that a little bit, it sets the stage for the fact that you're an attorney that's looking over extra stuff. There's other people doing some of this extra, this already work that you're paying for, and you're getting this extra set of eyes that are making sure everything's done right. And I think that for me, I know that sounds like a big plug right now, but it's true. It's something that for me, it's every single time it's on. So if you are ever wondering, use an attorney that's part of it. It's always a nice additive bonus for, there's always questions that come up that are pretty intense questions. So
Yeah, and I mean, issue too. A title company can't draft title curative documents. I mean, a lot of agents that have closings at, like, I won't name title companies, but a title company, they can't draft a power of attorney or they can't draft a post-closing lease back, or they shouldn't,
mhm.
because they're binding documents. And the attorney that works for the title company works for that title company. They don't work for that client.
Yeah.
Whereas I get a contract, I'm representing that buyer or that seller.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that that's the best thing is having that little team that's saying, for me, I know that, I call Marco anytime there's an issue or Jacqueline or anything that kind of comes. So I know the process, it works great for us. So new construction, we got a random question and they said, "My builder has pushed out our build and has been raising prices. What can I do?" Now, let me pause on this. And I'm going to preface anybody that's thinking about new construction, hit me up now. We're going to have to go through some fun jazz about new construction because boy, is it crazy. And when I say that is we look at totally different contracts. So if you're out there thinking about new construction, you think it's all jazzy, we get home inspections, we can take them to the bank, it's completely different. So tell us about how wild and crazy these contracts are that a builder can push back and raise prices.
Yeah, so new construction, those contracts are on average anywhere from 8 pages to 60 pages. And the builder's attorney drafts those contracts. And we're getting a little bit lessen of the crazy market here, but I mean, in the heyday, you could not ask that builder to change anything. They would say, "Do you want the property or not?" And
Mm-hmm.
the contract is drafted very builder friendly. Most of them have some sort of clause in there where if for some reason they don't perform within 180 days or even 360 days after the anticipated closing date, like, it doesn't matter. They just get
Mm-hmm.
an automatic extension. So that's a huge reason that an attorney should be a part of a new construction deal too. We can review that contract with the buyer to more so educate them on what is the difference between a standard contract or an as-is contract, because they are very different. They're not getting that home inspection. Really, most contracts, you get the CO, the certificate of occupancy, and that builder is going to make you close.
Yeah.
We always try to get a punch list added, which a punch list is a kind of threshold of what the builder will and will not close over. So say they go to the walkthrough and there's $15,000 worth of things that still need to be either repaired or replaced or just finalized. Say our punch list threshold was 10 grand. We wouldn't be expected to close yet until that threshold came down to that $10,000. So that's one of the biggest.
When is that threshold? That's interesting. I've never heard that before, and you are now educating me hardcore. When is that threshold or that punch list created?
It's created when you hire an attorney. Because most builders, they're not, it's not in their contract.
Well, and I would say that's the reason right there, is because most, even the builders from our side, the point is they're demanding that they use their own title, their own everything. So now for people that are under construction right now, can they hire you to come in mid-deal?
Yes. So, I mean, I have that quite a bit. And I think your first question was, I'm under contract now and the builder keeps pushing me to the side. I think our litigation department has gotten so many of those calls because unfortunately there's just been a lot of hiccups with new construction. The short answer is, in most cases, unfortunately, the buyer has no real ground to stand on. But there are those rare instances where they do. And we have a litigation department. We have 5 litigators, so they kind of help send demand letters. And then it helps too, because a lot of developers, my firm has really good relationships with. So John Cannon, for example, is a big builder here. I have his cell phone number. Him and I are friends.
Yeah,
so
that's great. Yeah.
I mean, if there's an issue with that, I can call him and say, "Hey, John,
let's get this finished.
Get this finished. Like we want to close. What's going on?"
And I think that statement is something that needs to be brought up more. And I think I need to kind of make it more on here, is that's the difference between working with local people here in Sarasota and in the Gulf Coast of Florida in general. It is still a small town feel where there is relationships like this with, local people. And even though you're, Berlin Patten Ebling is very big, but you're local in the fact that you have those relationships, you have, those working relationships with builders, with, other people. And so that's always great to have, people that are doing that, whether it be a lender or, Mallory on the deal itself, to kind of make sure things kind of speed up and stuff like that. That's great to know about the punch list, because I definitely have a builder right now that's kind of goofing off a little bit. We might have to round you up in there. So we did get another question on here, and I think that for the most part, did I miss any questions that I had told you that I was going to ask? Because I don't know any other fun ones, and we kind of touched on a bunch. But what's the weirdest reason a deal has fallen apart? There's someone in the comments, Matt Conway, said, "What is the weirdest deal?" I've never had it. To be honest, I've never had a deal that's fallen apart. It's kind of crazy. I almost had like one fall apart a couple weeks ago. I've almost had a couple, but I've had them all magically glued back together.
Well,
so
that's
for you.
What's that? That's good, and that's a testament to you being a good agent.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I build up enough people around me to keep everything pretty strong. So that's the core to it. But tell us, for you, what's the weirdest reason the deal has fallen apart?
So, I mean, honestly, this week I've had 2 fall apart. So the craziest reason I had was maybe 3 years ago, and I was representing the buyer. A couple of days before closing, the seller, all of a sudden, she said, I can't close anymore. I said, okay, why not? What's going on? Well, the ghosts are really going to be sad if I'm leaving. And I was like, oh God. I was like, yeah. So I continued to talk to her, going through everything. She didn't close. We had to file a specific performance suit against her. She ended up paying 75 grand in damages because it was 4 days before Christmas. My buyers had 2 kids, a bunch of dogs. So they had to pay for their Airbnb. there was a lot more correspondence back and forth before she just didn't close. I mean, I practically begged her. I was like, I will physically come to your house. Like, let's do a Ghostbuster type thing for this. Would not close. I felt a little sad because obviously, you know, little something
Yeah, I mean,
here.
that's wild.
At the end of the day, I mean, that was crazy. The whole firm still talks about it. They're like, oh, and everybody, I attract the crazies. All of my close are always the like, whoa, wait, did you hear what Mallory had? I'm like, yeah, that's me. But you know, it's made me a better lawyer because of it.
Oh man, that's too funny. I mean, I hope that I don't have any ghosts. The only time I hope that we have some ghosts is Halloween, but other than that,
Yeah.
that's it. Well, hey, I know we've had a lot of fun on this. I appreciate you spending 45 minutes with me tonight. You have a big game tonight. Go Bills, first game of the season. They're going to be apparently a great team this year. All I've seen today is like big hype around the Bills. So go have some fun. But hey, everybody that's watching, and if you're watching this after on YouTube, Facebook, wherever I'm going to put this out on, make sure to hit up Mallory. You can find her on Instagram, Facebook, mostly email. She's a lawyer, so she's only going to email. So hit her up on the anywhere you can find her. But she's an absolutely wonderful real estate attorney here in Sarasota, covering all the way from Tampa down to the Naples area. So thank you again. They're asking, can we follow you? You can also follow Berlin Patten, but
You
can
can
they
follow
follow
me. You'll
you?
get a lot of videos of this guy right here, Cooper.
There we go. So if you like talking or hearing from Mal, go ahead and follow her. Ask her any kind of fun, crazy questions. I know she's crazy or busy as hell, so don't ask her questions actually. But thanks so much, Mal, for jump on. I really appreciate your time.
Yep. Thanks so much, Dan, and I really appreciate you helping me be a part of all of this. So.
Oh, of course, of course. I appreciate the daily keeping all the deals together and keeping everybody happy for all my clients. So I appreciate it. But we'll talk soon and go Bills and have fun tonight. All right.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.